Welcome to Don't Mind Me, I'm Different, the podcast where I kick down the barriers and myths surrounding ADHD in the workplace. Whether it's navigating the office chaos, trying to break this stigma, or learning what is this thing called ADHD, I'm here step by step to advocate, educate, and empower you in any way that I can. Get ready to own your difference and shine on the job. Hey there, and welcome. This is episode 5. Wow, it's already 5. So I had the honor and privilege of talking with the founder and president at the Men's ADHD Facebook support group, Marc Almodovar. And he talked about how he knew he was a little bit different and being diagnosed with 16 and how he struggled with depression. He also talked about how that led into his desire to become a coach and help people, which eventually created this urge to make a Facebook group, which initially struggled before the pandemic, but then blew up to become one of the largest men's ADHD support group community that supports over 20,000 members. He also talks about how it was growing up with ADHD in the Hispanic community and how they are completely underserved. And stay tuned to the end because I have an exclusive offer to all of my loyal listeners. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your like ADHD origin story.
Yeah, so um, I kind of always knew that I was a little bit different than most, and if there was something, I guess, quote unquote, off about me. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but um, pretty much my whole life consisted of not just getting distracted every now and then, but almost living in distraction. I was the kid in kindergarten and throughout most of my elementary school years with sloppy handwriting, a disorganized desk, struggle with time management, things like that. Kind of like the stereotypical things we'll see in an inattentive ADHDer. And
Mm-hmm.
it really wasn't until I was 16 years old that I was first ever diagnosed with ADHD. At the time, I was really struggling with school. I had some pretty severe depression. Didn't really know what my strengths were,
Yeah.
um, and that was the first time in my life that I actually gotten some external help from a psychiatrist and started seeing a therapist and all that. And yeah, I mean, I ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD, and to me, it was just so eye opening. Um,
Yeah.
well, eye opening in one way, and another way, it just made so much sense, and it was kind of obvious. It was eye opening in the sense that, like, I finally had a name for the way my brain works, and knew that there was tools and resources out there for me. But also at the same time too, I knew that like everybody struggles to pay attention in a math class and everything like that, but like with the differences to the extent, right? And for me, things that were more doable for the everyday individual were extremely hard. But on the flip side, when something did manage to capture my interest, I was all above and beyond hyper focused. My whole life was about it. And it was kind of like this interesting dichotomy of how my brain worked. So when I saw that, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
when I saw that diagnosis on paper, I'm like, that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like it helps. Like it's like a piece of the puzzle just slides in, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, just I'm not just messed up. There's like a reason behind why the things that I'm doing. Um, yeah, I know that it was like that for me too. Like it definitely like people kept telling me to slow down, and
Hmm.
it did make sense. And when I was like, they were like, speak to your like your doctor and just see what, I was like excited about finding that answer. I wanted to know like what like there was a solution to what I'm dealing with,
Right.
and that's huge.
Yeah,
So
it's a sense
you
of relief. It's like I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
you're good.
I think Dr. Ned Hollowell describes it really well, where it's like you have a Ferrari engine for a brain, but unfortunately, most of society drives like a Nissan or something like that. And if you don't know how to
Hmm.
drive it properly, you're going to crash and struggle. But if you do learn how to drive it, then things turn out to be really well. But things are hard when we don't have those tools that you mentioned, um, because we're just going to crash.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then she said, I think she says that we have bicycle brakes. So,
Something like that. Yeah. Hmm. Well,
um, yeah, and it just makes sense because I was like most of us are like crashing all over the place. So, you like I found you on that men's ADHD support group. Like, tell me how did you get that started, or what was like what's the story behind that?
yeah. So about I want to say 5 years ago, yeah, I had just started um, really like learning about how I can help others because
Hmm.
kind of like I mentioned earlier, I have this all or nothing way of operating. So when I got into my own personal growth and wanted to understand my brain, um, I didn't want to just do that for me, but I wanted to help other people as well. So I really got in invested in life coaching at the time, and I wanted to start working with people with
Yeah.
ADHD because those are the people that I resonated with the most because I myself am an ADHDer. And I started to um, really get involved in the ADHD, I guess, industry, quote unquote, and started appearing on different podcasts and making a bunch of different friendships with people who do amazing work in this ADHD space. And the thing that blew my mind was that um, with all of this work that was happening at the time and the level of
Hmm.
boys and men that are diagnosed with ADHD, we are the ones that are highly diagnosed with ADHD, right? Um,
Yeah.
at the time, there wasn't really any dedicated space for men with ADHD, like a safe space where we
Yeah.
can talk about some of our issues, where we can um, kind of explore some of the things where, like, ideas around traditional ideas around masculinity and being someone with ADHD, like explore some of those ideas like within a safe space with other people who get it. That really wasn't a thing that existed at the time. So
Yeah.
I was literally just going for a walk one day and impulsively decided to start a Facebook group. At the time, it was called the ADHD Men's Support Group. The grammar was a little bit different then. Uh, and
Mm.
for about a year or so, I was like, maybe no one's going to join this. It's probably not going to be that big of a thing. And for about a year or so, um, we were like a small little, like 40, 50 member community. Um,
Okay.
not really much engagement or anything like that. And then the pandemic hit and everything changed dramatically, right? Like we started growing
Wow.
from for about like from going about a year of like 50, 60 members. We started growing about like 50 to 100 members every single week. And at the time, um, this guy named John Hazelwood, who does work for Black men with ADHD, he
Mhm.
kind of, him and I kind of came together and we were like, how can we turn this into more than just a Facebook group, but make it an actual community? Because at the time, especially, people really needed some
Yeah.
community, at least on Zoom. Um, and it ended up changing my life. I mean, years later, we're the largest online men's mental health community for people with ADHD. We're reaching over 20,000 members now. We're a nonprofit organization, and it's going into something that's way bigger than me. Like
Wow.
we have national we're like in person chapters in New York City and Michigan, North Carolina, and basically our mission is just to empower and educate men with ADHD in a way that's highly
Yeah.
accessible. And I'm so thankful that it's turned into what it's turned into.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah,
awesome that, and it's definitely needed. We need a community. Um,
hundred
I
percent.
like just me talking to other people, it's just like just a therapeutic value in understanding I'm not alone,
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
there's solutions out there, and a lot of times that it just takes me getting with somebody else to give me that little a bit of extra push that I need that I wouldn't have had on my own. Um, yeah, and I'm beginning to see that more and more. So
Yeah, yeah, no
that's
doubt. I mean, half the battle with ADHD is honestly learning how to be competent within yourself. Like people with ADHD, we are constantly, especially if we don't know how to manage our brains, we're constantly met with um, feedback that takes us down, whether it's the school environment or our work
mhm.
or everything like that. Like we're called lazy, we're called this and that, and um, one of the most beneficial things that we can do is be in a community with people that get us because it's one of the first times that we actually feel like we're not as alone as we thought we were, and we're not
Yeah.
crazy, and there's people out there that relate to us that have been where we are and that can help us get from point A to point B. So community is such an important aspect of being an ADHDer.
So you mentioned the community. So so there's a community within the Facebook group, or like
Yeah,
how
I
does
mean,
that work?
our community. So the Facebook group is definitely the bigger part of what we do. But um, we have in person chapters, and
Mhm.
we're on Meetup and everything like that too. We have in person
Okay.
chapters throughout the country. That's all on our website. Um, and we're also on Discord. But we use Facebook, Discord, and Meetup like as kind of like platforms to show who we are. But most of our meetings take place either in person or we do a variety of meetings on Zoom, just to buy a bunch of different experts we have in the community, experts in peer to
Yeah.
peer support. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like if I was a part of that community, how would I get involved in like the in-person meetups? You talked about the website. Where would I find that?
Yeah, it should all be on men's ADHD support group.org. There's an event
Mhm.
section that we have on our website, and then also on Meetup. If you look up the men's ADHD support group, you'll see our current in person chapters there.
Okay. That's awesome. I'll definitely take a look at that, and yeah, because like I definitely contribute to the group, and
Yeah.
I like the fact that you have like the top contributors, and I try to that's what it's all about, is being able to help somebody. Maybe like they post something or I post something, and somebody you get like 30 different responses. That can be good and bad at the same time, because you're like, which one? Now I've got too many options. But it's definitely better than nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and we're also looking for we're consistently looking to grow our in person aspect. So on our website too, if anybody is ever interested in starting an in person chapter, we have a contact us section
Mhm.
there where people can fill out their info, and our organization director will reach out to you and kind of like share what that's like. But anyways, yeah.
So, like, if I wanted to start one in Hagerstown, through you guys, I could do that.
Well, we would love to chat with you for sure. Yeah, so we would
Okay.
definitely chat with you if that happens.
Yeah, yeah, that would be definitely something I would be very interested in. Because like do want to become, with this podcast, like a voice, another
Yeah.
voice in the mix. Because like it's all about the flavor, right?
Oh, 100%,
Like some people,
100%.
some So like we got so many different like the diversity of this community is 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 incredible.
Right.
And to just have one size fits all, or this is the only way to go, is definitely does not work for us. So
It does
I
not.
definitely see the value in more people stepping up and talking about it in different ways.
Yeah, I
um
mean, everybody needs a voice in the ADHD space, and we all bring something different to the table. Like Shane, our operations director, I mean, he kind of speaks on behalf of those with autism and ADHD, and some of the
mm,
different ways to navigate around that. For me, like it's definitely the Hispanic men with ADHD that I tend to influence and be a voice for, and we all have different stories and backgrounds, and we're big believers in the more voices that we have and the more voices that we get to highlight, the better. So,
yeah, I definitely, and it's one of the reasons why I'm starting to try to learn Spanish,
oh,
is
cool.
because yeah, is because there's that whole community right there, um is very underserved. And as I'm
100%.
sure that what's your experience with ADHD, particularly in the Spanish community?
Yeah, so I mean, you pretty much nailed it with what you just said. It's underserved, right? Like, I mean, when I was first diagnosed with ADHD, the response from the family is, "What is ADHD?" Right? There's the education really wasn't there. Um,
Yeah,
there's a whole variety of issues behind that, but um, it's it's definitely um, a space that hasn't been explored enough. Like, I don't mean this
yeah,
in any type of disrespectful way to my partners at Chad or ADA. I'm not sure if you're aware of who they are. They're like some of the bigger nonprofits for people with ADHD. But every single year for like the past 30 or 40 years, they host an international ADHD conference, which is amazing, by the way. If you haven't gone yet, you should definitely go. It's like all of the big leaders in the ADHD
wow,
space in one space. Highly, highly recommend. Right. Um, and I promise I'm getting to the point in a second.
no, you're
it's
good.
like this one space that exists where it's like all the up to date information on ADHD. All the biggest experts are there. So many different support groups are there too. And for the first time, and they've been doing this for like 30 or 40 years now. But for the first time last year, or this year rather, me and uh, Dr. Marielle Hernandez and Maria Ortiz, who's a licensed social worker, we got together and we did the first event for Hispanics and people with ADHD.
Wow,
And that's like in
awesome.
2024. Like it's great, but at the same time, it's kind of sad too, because like that has never been talked about. And we did it originally
Wow,
thinking many people will show
that
up.
was
We
the
ended up
first event.
right, yeah, and we had a room
That's
packed with
crazy.
people and everything like that. And there really hasn't been I think much platforming of individuals who are willing to speak on that. But it also
Yeah,
hasn't been explored to where I guess the level that it should be. Um,
yeah,
so um, a- as far as my experience like that is like growing up, I can't say that I've ever had somebody that kind of looked like me and has the same background as me, like do the same work that I've done, and that's something that would like to see a little bit more of, I guess, if that makes sense. Like for
yeah,
me, I'm more intentional about platforming other Hispanics with ADHD who have a voice and have done something similar, because we just need a voice, and that's where things are starting to happen. But I guess there should be a little bit more of that.
yeah. And I'm sure you guys have a whole lot to talk about, and a different perspective. That's why, like us all getting
Totally.
together, like we can start to see things that we couldn't see before. When it comes to like solutions and just a general awareness, particularly like in the workplace, in the workspace, because
Oh yeah,
that's a lot of where like the problems come up with, at
right.
home and at work. and I know I spend most of my time at work. So when we come back, I asked Mark how he got involved in the Chad International Conference and how you can too. Talked about
Definitely.
the Chad and that internet. How do you get in? How did you get involved in that? Or how would one get involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, so how I got involved in that. Oh, well, first of all, the International ADHD conference, I believe it should be on Chad's website, chad.org or um,
Okay.
something like that. But what happened was uh, this guy named Brandon Mahan, who is the host of the ADHD Essentials podcast,
Yeah.
amazing podcast. He's most known for the episode of Jessica McCabe's How to ADHD, the Wall of Awful episode. It's amazing. Everybody should watch that. Um, but he uh, hosts panels every single year at the International ADHD Conference,
Hmm.
where he kind of like highlights some different influencers in the space and talks about up to date like information on ADHD and all that. And in 2022, um, our organization's vice president, John Hazelwood, he was invited to speak on a panel with Jessica McCabe of How to ADHD and Danny Donovan and all that. He was
Hmm.
invited to speak on a panel, and that was kind of like the first time that the men's ADHD support group had been highlighted in such a big way, if that makes sense. And at the time, I wasn't invited to speak yet at the conference. I attended just like as an attendee, um, and
Hmm.
that was kind of like the segue of like what introduced me to the people that are on Chad's board and all that. And then like 2023, then the men's ADHD support group ended up having their own panel, and we did it in 2024 too. But that was kind of like our little
Wow.
introduction. Like one of our board members was invited to speak, and then that kind of just like bridged the gap, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean the conference is available to attend for anybody, and you can apply to speak there. And even if you don't get to speak the first time you apply, just kind of like going in there and just introducing yourself to a bunch of
Yeah.
people and building connections, that will lead to future um, speaking opportunities depending on the individual and the subject.
Yeah. So you just go to chad.org and look for um these
Um,
opportunities.
it should be there. If it's not there, you just search up
Mhm.
International ADHD Conference 2025, and you'll see what we have, what's going to be in November of next
Oh,
year.
okay.
Yeah,
So
and
so it's
highly
like
recommend.
you went from like a Facebook group like
Yeah,
with 50 people and now you have a vice president and a CEO. That's amazing. That's just like something that like and that just goes to to testament like the the amount of creativity and determination that we can have if we get together, you know,
yeah,
for something like that's an amazing purpose like this, like ADHD awareness, you know, and especially since it's so kind of niched down and it's focused on men,
right.
although women definitely are underserved as well,
Yeah,
because it it's a lot about like if you're not presenting a problem like
right,
to yourself or to anybody else, you're you just fly under the radar,
right.
and it's unfortunate because it's like you're going your whole life without knowing that there's actually help out there.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said that, by the way, because unfortunately, it doesn't happen all the time. But unfortunately, there's a small percentage of criticism that we would get that we're pushing this idea that men have it worse or something like that, and that's not by any means what we're saying. The message that we're trying to push here is that support groups are great for everybody.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. And no doubt. I mean, like as far as the need for support for women with ADHD, I mean, women are the ones that are often, in some cases, never diagnosed with ADHD because
Yeah.
some of their symptoms and traits are not showing. Like they'll assume because a woman did well in school and managed to nail her career and everything like that, that she doesn't have any type of ADHD at all, and
Yeah.
that leads to like often a lifelong struggle that absolutely needs to be highlighted. So what you said is very important. Again, support groups and safe spaces are just a good idea, not just for men, but a good idea for everyone. And yeah, and as
Yeah.
far as
Yeah.
like how big we turned out, I mean, like, listen, and not everything is perfect in the men's ADHD support group. I want to be clear on that too. We definitely have um, growing struggles that any nonprofit or business would have. So, but I mean, I'm really, really fortunate that um, it's an idea that ended up resonating with people, um, and it's in the fact that it's not something um, that I just believe in, right? Like everybody in the board that we have, every volunteer that we have in the organization, is somebody that equally believes in this message just as much as I do. And the fact that I have
Wow.
that
Yeah.
is something that I'm extremely thankful for because doing all this type of stuff by yourself is hard. Um,
Oh yeah.
so,
This-
so
you need a team. You need a team.
I'm very fortunate about that. Yeah,
That's awesome. So
yeah,
like how did that come about? How did you meet these people that now are helping you out? Was it through the
yeah. I mean,
group or
it starts with well, the core of it is that the mission is so purposeful of helping men with ADHD be more confident and have more resources and everything like that. Um,
Mhm.
that again, I'm very fortunate speaking on this, but that people have come to me like wanting to be a part of this mission, right? So, it starts off with John, who a few years ago when we got together and made this an actual community, and then it just kind of like went from there. Of people wanted to um, see the group be great and support in all types of ways, whether it's somebody who is someone like yourself, where you mentioned you'd be very interested in doing an in-person meeting, or somebody like our Facebook moderators and everything like that. Like people have come like wanting to use their strengths and skill sets. So um, that was
Mhm.
that was really it. To be honest with you, it's just like the mission and purpose of it resonated with so many where people wanted to be a part of this.
So they just like messaged you and been like, "How can I help?" type
Yeah,
thing.
they messaged me and I would forget to reply for like about 30 days and then realize I forgot to reply and feel really bad about it.
Isn't that what we do,
Uh,
right?
yeah. And then I would reply back. Um, but yeah, and the flip side too, I also knew that I couldn't, like, although I do have a really good voice and I have my own set of information that's really helpful for planning, I don't have it all,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a space for partnering with um, doctors and dating coaches and all types of things. So um,
That's cool.
for me, doing it all with just me is the way that I see it. It's kind of inconsiderate to my community because when you reach like 20,000 members and stuff like that, I mean, there are people
There's
out there
just
in
no
different
way.
fields that need different types of support.
Yeah, I mean, like me personally, I wish I could do it all, but then I start trying to do it all and it's just so overwhelming. Like I get burned out. Like now I'm like, bring the help. Like I could use it. Cuz it just like you said, it helps to serve the whole purpose so much better. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing that I feel like most of us do struggle with. I know I've struggled with it for a long time is asking for help, because
Mhm.
it's like it adds to all that misconception of ourselves about being weak, about needing, about being lazy, about being not enough. So I understand that, and honestly, for me, the help is where, like, I'm not as good. I'm only as good as like the help that I have in my life.
Yep.
Like, I just get to look good. I've got all these people behind me backing me up. Um,
Right.
and that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So,
mean, it only makes sense, right? I mean, we
yeah,
and this goes to like that old school, I guess, toxic masculinity idea of that
mhm,
we need to be these people that just have strength all the time, that do everything by
yeah,
ourselves and don't ever ask for help. That doesn't work out in the long run. I mean, what we see is statistics that show men often um, having really poor mental health and high rates of things that could have
yeah,
been prevented had they just like asked for support. But what I found is, you know, when we do ask for help when we need it, that only helps
mhm,
us with our goals and what we want to achieve in our life, whether it's something in our career or a business that we're looking to start. Um, like getting
yeah.
support is something that will only help you excel, and I don't understand why anybody would not want to do that for themselves. You know what I mean?
Well, I think there's the barrier of, like, I don't want to be a burden, or they may not want to help me. But in actuality, it's like, when I know, for me, if somebody asks me for help, I'm 100% about it.
Right.
So it's like, you're actually helping other people when you ask for help.
Totally.
It's it's such a weird thing, and I don't think that that this whole toxic masculinity thing ever worked for anybody. It's just, there was nothing else. That was all that we knew. Um,
Yeah.
and we're still coming out of that. We're still trying to break this stigma that comes with ADHD and what it really is, because even the professionals don't know. Like, most of them
It's
don't
true.
know, and that's scary. That's scary for a lot. I know it was scary for me coming in. Um, my even my own therapist was like, I was like, what do I have? Like, what is it called? ADAD or ADHD? And he really couldn't give me an answer. So
Wow.
I was like, really? But not that he didn't help me a lot, and I continue to see him. But the like, I've got to continue to do my own research, because that helps
Yes.
me um understand who I am. So, you talked a
Totally
little
true.
bit about depression earlier, and I kind of wanted to, like, go deeper into that, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I would say, how would you describe, like, okay, so do you remember the first time you realized you were depressed?
Yeah. It was when I was 16. Um,
Do you remember
yeah,
what triggered that?
I mean, what triggered it? I don't know if I can remember the exact moment to be direct with you. I remember being told I had depression. That I
Mm,
remember, like, in a professional setting, but I can't say I remember the specific moment. I do remember what it felt like though. But it kind of just um for me it centered around a lot of low low amounts of self worth, right? Like
mm,
I truly thought that I had no purpose of being here at one point, and
yeah,
didn't see myself going anywhere. I mean, I struggled a lot in my social life, and I just and the funny enough thing is, while I don't deal with depression to that extent like I used um, to this day, I'm still battling like this mind that I have that's kind of like wired to be against myself. But it was like,
yeah,
and I've come a long way. I'm a lot more confident than what I used to be. Um,
yeah,
but at that time, it was like pretty bad against myself. Like I was like the worst person ever, and um, it was just
Yeah.
like a rewiring of a rewiring that was very much so needed at that time. Like I didn't know um what were the tools that I needed to do well for myself with ADHD. Um, I did this whole thing that we were just talking about of reaching out for help and everything like that. Like I didn't understand why that was so important or how to do that even.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it was just a lot of that. And um, I mean, I was so when I started working with a therapist and I started really getting to know what
Yeah.
some of my strengths were and why some of the reasons why some of the why I was thinking the way that I was. Um, that's when things started to change for me. But it's kind of like just like a left and right thinking of like what's the point of anything, and I don't
Yeah.
miss that at all. Yeah, I'm really thankful to have gotten the support that I needed, but it was just like a down time for me. Almost like it's like if you have a little bit of self sabotage in you, at least this was my experience,
Mm.
a little bit of a mindset that beats yourself up regularly. It's like imagine having that full time. Like that's what it felt like for me.
Yeah. No, I definitely have dealt with depression, and continue to deal with it. And I like when I was younger, especially, I would be laying like I would sleep a lot, miss work a lot. Um, and then I'd wake up, at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and feel even more depressed because I just slept most of the day away. Um,
Right,
it's terrible. And like the fact is, like most of us, like I didn't want to talk about it because I thought I was the only one that dealt with this, and there was something that was seriously wrong with me. And I was speaking to therapists, but I wasn't doing it because I wanted to get better. I was doing it because I was being told to do it, like by my mom, mainly my mom, and because she all she wanted to do was get the help that I needed. But like therapy isn't any type of help isn't gonna work if I don't think that I need it.
right.
So it's definitely something and I'm just beginning to be able to really explore it and talk about it. Um, and I believe that it does need to be talked about more because
Yeah,
more, it just seems like so many people, whether you have ADHD or not, are dealing with depression, and there
right.
needs to be it the one main thing that really helps it is talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And even like that's one thing we see a lot in our meetings and whatnot. It's kind of like when somebody's talking about um having gotten laid off from a job because of time and attendance issues and things like that, and in the meeting you see kind of like just a bunch of people's heads nodding and stuff. Like that feeling
Hmm.
of like resonation,
Yeah.
right? Is that the word I'm looking for? That feeling of resonating with
Or
somebody.
connection. Yeah.
Right? It's such a huge, powerful step for us because it's like um,
Yeah.
I'm not the crazy outcast that I thought I was, and there's people out there who get it. Like there's a space for AD for professional ADHD coaches and ADHD doctors, like sharing the tools and tips and everything like that. That's very important. But sometimes um, what's really needed is just a voice that resonates with people, right? Like
Oh
just
yeah.
people to feel like less alone. That's why we push this idea of community so much. It's because um, we just we just need to know that that safe space is there. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, there is a way to get out some of those struggles that you've been struggling with. Um,
Hmm.
you just need to be paired with somebody else who's been there before. That's how I feel. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That definitely. Yeah. That definitely is very important. even if somebody, and sometimes I get um people that are like, "Oh man, you sound more depressed," just because I'm talking about it more than I have. Um, and it's some people just don't want to talk about it. But that's why you need to have those safe spaces
Yeah,
that you're not alone, and it's going to stay there, and people get it. People aren't going to judge you
right.
because of this. They're going to actually thank you or be like, "Hey, me too."
Yeah,
Sometimes that's all we need is like just me too.
yeah.
Yeah, after we get back from this break, Mark describes what that depression felt like and how that transformed him.
It was heavy. Yeah, it was heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something that um that people can see in me at the
Hmm.
time. I mean, I was usually the one in social settings with my head down and not really sharing how I feel about things or contributing much to conversations because again, like my mind was so stuck on like what's the point?
Yeah.
Like no one's gonna like what you have to say or appreciate who you are or anything like that. So it was something that was very visible. And that even like everybody who knew me then and knows me now can see like almost like a night and day difference. I mean, like now what people
Mm.
usually see when they're interviewing me or see me in a social space is a very energetic version of myself and very positive and motivational and everything like that. And that was not me 10 years ago by
Yeah.
any means. So it was pretty heavy
Wow.
and it definitely impacted people that cared a lot about me. Um, and yeah, in a way, in a really weird way, I am actually kind of thankful for that time period because it influenced a lot of the work
Mm.
that I do now. Like whenever I'm getting ready for a speaking event or whenever I'm doing any type of work in this space, I always think about what was the voice that I needed at that time and how can I be that.
Wow.
So it fueled my work
Yeah.
in a very powerful way, and like arguably, like had I not gone through that time period, um, I I probably wouldn't have been able to impact the community the way that I do now. For it, so there is some benefit that I have. But as far as any interest in reliving that, like I would never want to go through that again. And I'm thankful now that I have the
Of
mindset that
course.
I have now, where I do work with a therapist and I have my my community of people and really close friends that I can go to when the highs are high and when the lows are low. So I'm really thankful for that. But yeah,
Hmm.
it was heavy. It was a dark space, but it influenced who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can, like, I know that I've had times where I was seriously contemplating suicide during my
Yeah,
life. So, and that is like very common with people with ADHD, because the overwhelming emotions that we feel, and then you add depression on top of that, like the fact that we can't succeed at anything, and everyone's telling us how worthless we are, and we don't understand things. Yeah, that's the real reason why I feel like it's important. And it was interesting that you talked about how, um what would you have wanted to tell your past self? Like, what would you have wanted to hear? Um and how you reflect on that time period to motivate you now. Um yeah, so you would say that that your identity through this passion that you're following has really like helped transform you
yeah, no
in
doubt.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again, who is it that I needed to hear? And there are people that don't resonate with what I have to say, and that's perfectly fine. But I know whenever I speak from that place, that is when my message like really lands because people with ADHD they relate to that feeling of feeling worthless and feeling like
Hmm.
they don't have a space and all that type of stuff. So for me,
Yeah.
I tend to double down on that because I'm not for everybody, but I am for people who are like me.
Yeah, those automatic negative thoughts, that because like negativity is something that really motivates us in the like we really resonate with that negative motivation more than more so than a lot of people. So it's hard to be like, well, just stop thinking negatively. It's like that's the way my brain's been operating for most of my life. Like that's not going to change overnight. But like when I practice things like mindfulness and meditation and really seriously like look at the thoughts, um and question their validity,
Yeah,
because that's all they really are. Like
yes,
even my beliefs like are really only words and thoughts. Like, so they can always be changed. I can always like say, well, this isn't true because of this, but I
right,
can always go back that other way because it's so much easier to be negative.
right. Yeah, that's why coaching is so powerful for people with ADHD too, as far as like helping rewire that way of thinking a
Yeah.
little bit. But yeah, I mean, like when we think about like um, uh, the concept of consistency and how that relates to people with ADHD and the struggles around that, it
Hmm.
honestly has a lot to do with the way that we think. Like for example, if somebody you thought about like mindfulness and meditation, but like if an ADHDer was to say that they would try a 30-day meditation program and then day 11 they forget to do it, um, or they sleep in or something like that. Instead of what will happen is we'll have a mindset of I didn't do this. I'm terrible for it. I'm the worst person ever. Like,
Yeah.
and then never touch it again. When really our mindset needs to be in a place where it's like day 11, I slipped up and I fell off. Good news is
Yeah.
I'm not defined by it, and tomorrow is the thing to bounce back, right? Like that's the mindset that
Yeah.
we really need to look um, to achieve. So, um, and yeah, to your point, it's kind of like about reframing and rewiring. Like there's a way to me there's a way to hold yourself accountable and still keep your head up at the same time. It's like instead of saying that I
Yeah.
slipped up and I'm the worst person ever, it's like no, it's like I slipped up. Now what can I learn from it? And that doesn't define me, right? So
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like, I'll forget things that I normally do, and in the past, I would have just beaten myself up and like, "You're an idiot. How could you forget that?" But now I'm just like, because I understand myself and that I'm wired that way, that happens. That just happened, you know? I'm gonna work to make sure that doesn't happen, but I've just gotta be okay with that happening here and
yeah,
there. As long as I'm getting better, at most of the stuff, and sometimes making those mistakes I can learn, like what did I do before that made me forget? So that like maybe I need to create a system where I'm not going to do those things before I'm supposed so I don't forget. Because like if I open up a web page and I'm looking for something, and Google's really good at this, like, and all of a sudden I see something else that's, I'm like, oh, I need to check that out now. I've totally forgot what I wanted when I opened up that web page to actually do. So I've got to
yes,
like, get better with that, but it's going to happen. So,
yeah, no doubt.
yes. So, so how do you think that the this has a like your depression has affected relationships, like other relationships in the past or even now?
Yeah, I mean at the time, like when it was like big for me, it was impacting my relationships in the sense that there was not many relationships. Right? I
Hmm.
wouldn't um, involve myself in much friendships or be in much social settings because again, like I didn't have that self belief that I do have now. It's like it kind of goes back to like what you said about how some people struggle for asking for help because they think that they're a burden, right? Like for me, I have that full time mindset that I am a burden. So if anything,
Yeah.
there was a lot of loneliness that was in there. Um,
Yeah.
Mainly because I just didn't think that people got me or that I related to anyone. Like all this mindset that I look at as complete nonsense now. But it was a lot of just not being um, willing to involve myself or say hello to new people at the time because I was just so wired against me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you want how would you have wished they would have responded to you? And like what would you wish that they would have had said to you during those times?
Yeah, I mean, the immediate answer is that comes to mind is uh, because at the time, like the education system was very present and everything like that. I would have, I guess, I would have wanted a little bit more resources as far as like how my brain worked and understanding around
Mhm.
that. But um, for me, it definitely would have been a more heavy investment on my self confidence. Right, that's the biggest thing for me. Like I would want to would have wanted to have known how to look at myself in my head up a little bit, a little bit more exploration of what my strengths were, as opposed to um, me trying to focus on a history class that had no relevance on my life. You know what I mean? Things like that would have gone a
Mhm.
long way. But yeah, honestly, I would have. I within my own self, like I mainly look at me first of all. Like I would have wanted to like if I were back in that 16-year-old brain and way of thinking, I would have wanted a little bit
Yeah.
more self affirmations, right? Like a little bit more around
Mhm.
I got this. Um, you can learn from your mistakes, all that type of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think that 16-year-old would have like taken that though? Like, like do you think that that would have resonated with it with your 16-year-old version?
I don't know. Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I know it resonates with me now. That's for sure. Um, but I probably would have asked like what that looks like or something like that. But I
Okay.
didn't really understand how to speak to myself properly like I do now. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I would absolutely mention about how that suits me now. And I honestly
Yeah, yeah.
basically like this goes back to like a content piece of content that I put out not too long ago, where I talked about like how I feel that relying on external information for your own self confidence is a really, really
Mhm.
tough way to go about things because you can't control how people feel about you. Um,
Yeah.
like there will be moments where like even in my work nowadays, like where I do get some criticism here and there, and if I let that take me down, then then
Yeah.
what does that speak to like my true confidence level? What I've learned a lot in my life these days is the importance of being like my own hype man first of all, right? Like just to remind myself of my
Yeah.
own strengths and celebrate my wins and all that type of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
like the external support can be great and go a long way, but
Yeah.
um, my mission is always to be able to look at myself in the mirror and be confident in what I see and who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. I've always been something more of like, and I'm getting better with this is like taking compliments because like it would always go straight to my head, and I was just worried about my ego and tripping over that. But it's like I had to just look at it differently because I wasn't used to complimenting myself. I wasn't used to like giving myself the credit I deserve for doing, something that's helping me. I would always see it as something that's small and where I'm not at. But now I see it as like, hey, if I got, one sentence or a paragraph written for an outline for a podcast, um, that's that's good. That's more than, like, cause I would be like, if it's not all done, like right away, like I'm a failure. Like it's not good enough. And that's not sustainable. That always gives me a lot of anxiety and feeds the depression. So what I see is like you're further along than you ever were. Um, and thinking about how I used to be is definitely just grounds me and reminds me of like that I've come a long way.
Yeah, and that
So
mind. What's cool about that mindset is that it fuels further productivity, right? It's like
yeah,
those celebrating a win like builds the dopamine and whatever to keep on going to the next
yeah.
thing, as opposed to being stuck on what you didn't do, quote unquote.
Plus, people want to compliment you. If you don't give them that chance, it's like it's for them too. So it's like it's okay. Like it's okay to receive those as long as I'm like don't let it fuel my ego in a negative way.
Yeah,
Um.
yeah. There's nothing wrong
So
with
so
accepting
what?
accepting compliments.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we have, have like I definitely had trouble myself, but so what are some of the things that like have helped like continue to help you with overcoming depression? Um
Yeah, I mean, again, the depression is not something that stands out for me so much nowadays. Like for me, it's mainly like I guess some of the um, my ADHD ways that I still take on. But I think that um, as far as helping overcome, it's the fact that I have worked with a therapist that really resonates with me. And has kind of taught me these concepts of like healthy self accountability and all that. That's been amazing. Um,
mhm.
I love the fact that I truly know now that I'm not alone like I once thought I was. I have my small circle of really good friends that I can call when the highs are high and the lows are low. That has been amazing for me. And then honestly, learning to navigate my ADHD and learning about what some of my strengths are has helped a lot too, because that has
Mhm.
resulted in me achieving a little bit more things in my professional career and in my own personal life that kind of like fuels the affirmations a little bit more, right? Like I get to remind myself that I've spoken at international ADHD conferences, that I traveled around, and
Yeah.
I don't always work. Like I get to have all that on my resume to help fuel the negative self-talk when it comes out. So that has been really huge for me. But yeah, um, finding my people that really resonate with me, and then understanding how my brain works and giving myself the tools that are needed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, what's really been helping me is like is just trying to be more social with people that I don't know. And going on a deeper level. Because those interactions like because I used to think that I didn't like talking to people. And that just wasn't me because I'm an introvert. And now that I've, you know, pushed those boundaries and talk to people on a deeper level, it's like that depression seems to just not be as powerful as much as it was. And it's happens less often. So yeah, it's definitely a good thing to be more social.
Cool.
Pro
Love that.
social. So,
Oh,
one thing, are you a Star Wars fan?
Um, I can't say that I'm like a super big Star Wars fan. I mean, I've seen like episode 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, and 3, and all that. I think I've seen some of the recent ones, but I don't know. I wouldn't say that I'm like a big fan with that stuff like that. But I'm curious, like, why?
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, which character that you know would be like would suffer from depression in Star Wars?
Yeah,
Do you think?
I feel like Luke has been through it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
like a father that's not present in his life and all that, and
Wow. Yeah.
learning his father is was someone who's really turned out to be really evil and all that. I feel like that'll do it for you. Um, but yeah, that's the best answer that I can think of. That man's been
Yeah, and
around.
for him to overcome it, I would say Darth Vader, like Anakin Skywalker,
That's true.
because like you murdered a bunch of kids, like that cannot like not have an effect on you for a long time.
Yeah, and plus,
So,
I mean,
and
he's like in constant pain and like in that Darth Vader suit or
yeah,
something like that. Like that'll that'll definitely make you really irritable at the very least.
yeah, and you can't show your face, and it's there's so many things behind it. So
Yeah, he found out
yeah,
that he
it's been
killed
it's
him and all that. Like it's crazy.
yeah, I know we could go on forever with that, but yeah, it's been a pleasure. I definitely thank you for coming on the show, and yeah, I look forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah, awesome. We'll definitely chat soon. Regarding if you're interested in the in-person thing, if that's something you want to follow through with. But yeah, it's been amazing chatting with you, and I appreciate you taking the time for this interview.
Well, one thing before we leave, is there anything that you want the audience to know,
Yeah.
or that
Um.
you want to impart them with?
Yeah. Uh, just that community is very important, and understanding that while learning different ADHD tools and hacks like Pomodoro techniques and proper ADHD medication and all that stuff is amazing and great and will do you wonders. Um, to me, when you're doing the work of navigating ADHD, you have to understand that it's not about learning how to be normal. It's about learning to do some of the things that are not ADHD friendly in our society, like paying taxes and applying for jobs and all that type of stuff. That's very important.
Mm,
But honestly, it's about tapping into your strengths a little bit more and learning how to be a little bit more of who you are and let go of that mask a little bit. For me, like I'm not somebody who's really good with administrative stuff or anything that involves like organization. So I choose to not have a career that involves doing a lot of that. Somebody who's a very good speaker, somebody who's very creative and everything like that. So for me, when I look at my strengths, I try to do more of that and things that can make me money while I'm doing that. And that's something that I feel that every ADHD should do. Like understand what their strengths are, lean into
mm,
who you are as opposed to trying to be something that you're not. Life gets way better when you're
yeah,
being you.
awesome. Well, thank you again, and may the source be with you.
That's awesome. All right, awesome. Thank you for taking the time for this conversation. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
So
All
wow,
right, so
that was
here
amazing, and I
we're here with
definitely learned a
Mark.
lot. Thank you, Mark, and I
I don't
hope
want
that
to
you
mess up
guys
your
did
last
too.
name.
On the coming episodes, I'm going to be doing a series on focus
Almodovar. Yeah.
primarily on
Okay. So
depression
Mark
and ADHD. It's going to
Almodovar,
be in depth,
based out
and
of
I
New York
definitely learned a
City.
lot, and I hope you will too.
Tell me a little bit
So as
about yourself
promised,
and your like
there will
ADHD
be
origin
exclusive
story.
content, early access, merchandise, and even a one-on-one coaching session with me on my new Patreon page. So that helps by giving contribution to the show so I can service you guys better, by being able to focus on getting all the right content. You can contribute to that at patreon.com/Ron Sowers. And that's patreon.com/RONSOUERS. And there will be more information on that page. And remember to subscribe and share the love. Thank you for listening.